All right, thank you very much, Greg. We're going to go ahead and turn it over to Richard Blair, who's going to speak to us about his perspective as a Pennsylvania vineyard owner and operator. So, Richard,
hey guys, doing today? Yep, I'm ready to go. So there will be no slides because I didn't make any slides, and you guys see enough spotted lanternflies that you don't need to see anymore. So I'm just going to tell you my observations from living with these guys for the last 8 years or so. I have 2 vineyards 10 miles apart. First vineyard is located 2 miles from the stone quarry that they assume was the insertion point of the spotted lanternfly. And before 2014, when everybody first started noticing them, I'm sure we noticed a few in the vineyards, but we didn't think anything of them, just another bug and a couple of them. By 2014, we were like in ground zero, and it was very overwhelming because there was no knowledge about what to do, what to spray, how to take care of them. And so we didn't spray that much. We just stayed with our same spray schedule. By 2017, that vineyard was history, was dead, along with one of my neighbors who had 35 acres, had the same problem in 2017. So it was really eye-opener of what invasive species can do to your livelihood. We have another vineyard 10 miles north of the first vineyard, and our first sighting didn't occur there until 2017. And by 2019, we were in the thick of it again. But this time, because of the research done by Penn State and PDA and USDA, we kind of knew what to do and what to spray and how to take care of them. We sprayed too early and too often, probably as a reaction in the first couple of years in 17 and 18. In 2019, we took the position that we'll spray at grape-growing moth and at Japanese beetle. And that kind of took care of the nymphs, but the adults became very aggressive in late August, early September. And then we had to start moving to the Danitols, the Mustang Maxes, Carbaryl, and it was somewhat effective. By 2021, I would say our populations in our vineyards were down by 75%. And I'm not saying that because I think we did a great job controlling them. I think it was that because they had eaten up most of their food and had to move on. One of the things that early on was the control of the tree of heaven, and a lot of people started using Garlon, triclopyr to control tree of heaven, and actually that killed our vines because it's very toxic to vines, and it's very vaporous. And so miles away, we could get a whiff of Garlon being sprayed, and the vineyard would get toast. So in 2019, we actually lost about 10% of our vineyard to Garlon from neighbor spraying. So sometimes the cure is not worth it. Sometimes when you start looking at how you control other things. Right now we have limited losses in our current vineyards. We replanted the home vineyard 3 years ago. We're controlling the spotted lanternfly over there. The numbers are way low. We're kind of like, do a lot more scouting, spend time in the vineyard, look at where the nymphs are, what the stages are, where they're located. Most of the time, the adults are lazy and they only go to the first end panels of the of the vineyards and the wood sides. And so you don't really need to spray the inside of the vineyard, so you can save some money. But bottom line, it costs money to combat spotted lanternfly. Each time we get on a tractor and add chemicals to it, it costs money. So it's going to change some of the growers' economic viabilities in the future. So if you guys have any questions, I'll be more than happy to take them. I'm sure this, I'm probably the only grower you had here today.
Richard, this is Dana Rhodes with Pennsylvania Department of Ag. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
And I really appreciate the perspective that you're giving us. I'm just curious, do you do events at your vineyard, wine tastings, evening affairs? I know a lot of the vineyards bring in musicians, and how did your customers respond to this type of activity going on?
So basically, yes, we do a lot of events. The vineyard is basically an event center anymore. People put up with it. So at every table we have outside that we give a fly swatter to, and the people think it's the game to go kill as many as they can. But it gets kind of nasty when the flies start landing in the wine or on the back of their head or things like that. So for a couple of years, it was tough. People put up with it. Last year was a lot better. We had a lot less spotted lanternfly activity, and I'm just hoping that that donut that everybody talks about stays a donut hole rather than a Foshnot,
Yes, I'm with you on that one, Richard, for sure. We definitely want to keep that hole there. You do have a question. People are wondering if other vineyards were seeing the same changes in densities that you were. Do you know?
Yes, all the vineyards near me, we're seeing the same density. They were approaching it about the same way. One of my neighbors' vineyards, they lost 35 acres because they weren't proactive enough, but all the other vineyards lost something in the early years. It was, and they're, some of them are rebuilding and some decide not to. So.
Okay. And I know it's been very hard. Like you said, it's your livelihood, and you were not expecting an insect to impact it so much. Any words of advice for other states who do not have this as a problem? Partnerships, I think, are very important. You mentioned Penn State being there to assist you. Would you encourage other people, other vineyards to reach out and start working with their universities and extension folks now?
Yeah, I think what has happened in the last 8 years, 6 to 8 years through Penn State and the PDA and USDA is that there's a baseline of knowledge now. And that can go on to Virginia, Maryland, New Jersey, Ohio, and you're never gonna, we will never stop spotted lanternfly from existing, I don't believe. But if we can control it and make it manageable like the Japanese beetle, I think that's a positive step.
Okay. And another question just came in. What level of threat does spotted lanternfly pose to your bottom line? Do you feel that spotted lanternfly is an existential threat to your business, and do you worry about other pests more than spotted lanternfly?
So spotted lanternfly and deer are threats to the grapevine business, but spotted lanternfly is truly the worst one, I believe, because you can control the deer better. At our vineyards, we're a specialty crop. We're not a corn, soybean commodity. so that we can change our prices to reflect the cost of operations and not have people not buy more. It didn't affect us economically that much, other than out-of-pocket expense to replant. But it's a long-term expense that a lot of vineyards are going to have to put up with. And if they're into the commodity grape growers, I don't know how they're going to do it.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. I think that's it for you on the questions. Again, thank you very much for your time,
You're
and
very
do
welcome.
appreciate you participating with us today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So Jay, do you want to take over?
Will do. All right.
Our
Well, thank you,
next
Dana, and thank you,
speaker?
Richard.
Thanks.
Yep. So thank you to both for a lot of great questions and answers there for us. And we're now going to turn it over to Donnell Brown from the National Grape Research Alliance out of California. So have it away.
All right, thank you, Jay. And I assume you can hear me and hopefully see my screen, see the correct screen.
Yep. Correct. Yeah, it looks great.
Great, thank you, Jay. So I'm Donnell Brown. I'm president of the National Grape Research Alliance, or NGRA, and thank you to the summit organizers for the invitation to be part of today's summit. Honestly, it's a little intimidating being on the agenda with so many scientists working so hard to control and maybe even eradicate the spotted lanternfly on behalf of those of us in or representing industry. Thank you. I chose this photo from David Coyle of Clemson University to start my talk because it reminded me of this line from the sobering article in Smithsonian Magazine in October 2020. Spotted lanternfly, ruinous and beautiful, the size of your thumb and a destroyer of worlds. So with those dramatic words, knowing that I stand between you and lunch today, I'll do my best to inform and maybe even entertain you a bit as we talk about the serious threat of spotted lanternfly to California viticulture. First, a bit about me and my experience with SLF. Penn State's Julie Urban shared this photo of a vineyard in Pennsylvania in a talk she gave to NGRA stakeholders last year. I recognized it right away as a vineyard I'd seen in 2018. I'd been in my job just a little over a year when I attended the American Society for Enology and Viticulture Eastern Section Conference in Pennsylvania. We were touring a vineyard with a wine grower and noticed the adjacent vineyard, this vineyard, was dead. When asked about it, the vintner said his neighbor had had an infestation of an invasive pest, and he didn't elaborate much more. We later learned that his vineyard was for sale, so I'm guessing he trained himself not to talk too much about what had killed the vineyard next door. I later learned it was SLF and that it's a major threat to all US viticulture. Therefore, it's a concern for stakeholders of the National Grape Research Alliance. NGRA represents the research interests of the wine and grape industry. That's wine grapes, juice grapes, table grapes, and raisins nationwide. And we bring together American grape growers, processors, and wineries, federal research agencies, academic institutions, and cooperative extension programs to improve and protect our industry through science. We focus our efforts in these 4 research priorities: natural resources and environment, integrated production systems, genetics and grapevine improvement, and extension and outreach. And we work to catalyze large-scale, game-changing research in and across these areas to achieve scientific solutions to industry problems through projects that couldn't be done without collaboration. In this way, NGRA has been instrumental in generating some $45 million in funding for grape research since our founding 18 years ago. So if we're a national organization looking at big tent research for the grape and wine industry at large, why am I on the agenda today talking about just one state? Because the spotted lanternfly is a threat of epic proportions to California viticulture, maybe even worthy of its own Hollywood turn. Hey, there was Mothra. But seriously, spotted lanternfly has not yet been detected alive, anyway, in California, and it has been intercepted in airplanes from the eastern US. A state exterior quarantine has been declared to keep it out because, as we know, grapevine is the SLF's #1 favorite thing to eat. And there are a lot of grapevines in California. With the exception of the juice grape sector, which is split between Washington State and the Lake Erie region of Pennsylvania, New York, and Ohio, already in the crosshairs of SLF, California is home to about 91% of all grapes grown in the US. And let's break that down by sector. 100% of the US raisin crop is grown in California's San Joaquin Valley with a production value of just over $300 million. More than 99% of US table grapes are grown in California, also in the San Joaquin Valley and Coachella Valley, with a crop value of $2.12 billion in 2020. Oops. And 81% of American wine grapes are grown in California, bringing in a farm gate value, that is value to growers, not including finished wine, of $3.24 billion. The retail value of California wine is estimated at $43.6 billion. The production of wine grapes in California is 1/3 larger than the total produced in all of Australia. In fact, on a global scale, California is the world's 4th largest producer of wine in the world. Sticking with wine for a moment, it should be noted that California is home to 2 of the world's most famous and high value wine growing regions. Napa Valley with just over 44,000 acres under cultivation, and Sonoma. Continuing the movie theme from a couple slides back, the AVA is represented here by Francis Ford Coppola Winery in Geyserville in Sonoma County, where there are about 60,000 acres under vine. Although the bearing acreage isn't that large, the impact of the loss of either or both of these iconic growing regions would be felt around the world. Similarly, due to the dominance of table grapes and raisins in California and international exports of these commodities, an SLF invasion here would make a global impact. Research has so far shown that 22 cultivated and 70 wild hosts are present here. And California is home to lots of things SLF likes to eat: walnuts, hops, Christmas trees, all of which we have in abundance. In fact, the California Department of Food and Agriculture reports that California is the world's 5th largest supplier of food and agriculture commodities, with more than 400 crops grown here. The state is often called the breadbasket of the world, making it an attractive destination for this voracious pest. California also is the most populous state in the nation, with several of the country's largest cities, including San Francisco, LA, and San Diego, and sprawling suburban areas. Besides people, what do populous areas have in common? Rail and freight, 2 of SLF's most reliable modes of transportation, and in California's case, ocean-based cargo freight direct from Asia. And we also have Tree of Heaven in abundance, SLF's preferred host. As USDA's Arenado explains, because of the widespread presence of this weed tree, also an invasive species, in urban and suburban areas, there can be large SLF populations in populous areas. Given all these factors, it's hard to believe SLF hasn't landed in California yet, but indications are that it's coming. All modeling efforts show SLF is likely to touch down in California. This map from USDA's Agricultural Research Service was really the first that got Western grape growers worried. Released in 2019, it was the first map to show US areas of suitability for the pest, based on sophisticated modeling of environmental factors, including temperature, elevation, and rainfall, as well as known locations of the pest. As you can see, California's viticultural areas are shown in orange, highly suitable homes for SLF. And last year, Penn State scientists released this SLF egg hatch prediction map, showing that much of California, if not the US, is a good place for spotted lanternfly to successfully spawn new populations. There are more prediction tools at stopslf.org under the resources tab, all showing that SLF is likely to continue its westward migration. transport risk and growth rate forecast maps, both from Temple University, are particularly chilling. Closer to home, here in California, Surendra Dara and Roland Bacco of UC Cooperative Extension released a set of risk maps specific to California specialty crop commodities in November 2021. Surendra has recently moved to Oregon State University and is now serving as director of the North Willamette Research and Extension Center. He and Roland overlaid county acreage and crop value reports on risk maps for spotted lanternfly to forecast what's at stake for California farmers if or when SLF lands here. This map shows SLF risk to cultivated grape in acreage. Clearly, there is risk to many of the counties where grapes are grown, including Napa and Sonoma. And here we see SLF risk to cultivated grape in value. For Kern County, where some wine grapes and a predominance of table and raisin grapes are grown, the threat when expressed as value of grapes is approaching $1.8 billion. Taken together, these charts show the outlook isn't good. If we start seeing this in California vineyards, the economic impacts could be huge. As the Stop SLF SCRI project team has found, these impacts include decrease in production up to and including vine death due to blocked photosynthesis and desiccation, and increase in insecticide applications. For example, in trying to manage the pest from 2016 to 2018, 5 vineyards in Southeast Pennsylvania increased the number of insecticide applications from 4.2 to 14, raising the average cost of their spray program 171%. So much for sustainability efforts. As we all know, there are a lot of states between California and those that have already encountered the spotted lanternfly. That Smithsonian article I mentioned at the beginning of my remarks cites a production value of all grapes as $6 billion. But our colleagues at Wine America commissioned an economic impact study in 2017 to quantify the contribution of wine to the US economy when jobs, taxes, tourism, and spending were factored in. The number for wine alone was nearly $220 billion. Is this SLF's potential impact for US viticulture? Probably or hopefully not. But whatever the number, if SLF continues to spread, the impact will be substantial. Let's stop SLF before we find out. Here's my contact information if you'd like to know more about NGRA, how we work, and or you'd like to receive our communications, including our monthly newsletter, please don't hesitate to be in touch. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Donnell. So there are a couple of questions for you that just popped up, if you have a moment. If you would like to answer this, or if anyone wants to, so has there been any research on controls for spotted lanternfly in organic vineyards, organic grape tables? Would netting be allowed and effective in these settings?
I am not all that well informed on that topic, but I don't imagine there'd be any reason you couldn't do netting in an organic vineyard. But I could take that offline and find out. Jay, I don't see that question. It's in
the Q&A section.
In the Q&A, okay.
Jay, this is Greg Barr. I could just throw in what I know from working with the companies that have the labels and the EPA and then the folks doing the research with the netting that had to be not touching the grapes at all. So they had to set up, so there was no way it could touch the grapes because there was just zero tolerance for any of those products on the grape, whether they're organic or not. So, but yeah, once we assured them that they would not actually be draped over the grapevines or touching them, then they were good. So that'd be the only concern probably, is like having them actually touch any of the grapes or the grapevines.
Great. Thank you, Greg.
Brian Walsh also just wanted to point. Okay,
I see that clarification. Yeah, on the egg hatch prediction map. Thank you for clarifying that. Jay, can everybody see the Q&A to see these questions?
I don't believe so. I'll just read it quick. Brian Walsh pointed out that the Penn State egg hatch prediction map is not an indicator of where eggs could be. It's an indicator of how much hatch would have occurred in a given year if eggs were present, based on growing degree dates accumulated to that date. Generally, we use it as a tool for managers to know when to scout and begin treatments if they choose to do so, and meant to be used in real time. So just a point there. So I'll just quick throw this out. We've got another question from Kelly here. We kind of wanted to take this period, obviously, for lunch. So feel free to break away if you would like to for lunch. But for our presenters, so Donnell, you're welcome to stay with us, and we'd be happy to have you. Richard, if you would like to come back on. Any of our presenters so far this morning. We kind of want to open this back up. If there's any additional questions you wanted to ask while we still have our stakeholders here with us. So just working through the questions here. There was an additional comment from Kelly Hoover. So just for clarification, spotted lanternfly may lay eggs on Christmas trees, but they do not use it as a feeding host. So pine trees in general, at this point, we haven't observed feeding on that.